Why do atheists exist? The most popular answer is because there's no evidence proving the existence of God or any other divine being. As Christians, we are told to believe God exists, even though we hadn't been given convincing evidence to support that belief. You were told to believe in something without any reason other than your parents or your pastor telling you to believe what they believe, regardless if they truly believe it themselves or not. You're told to believe specific ancient Hebrew stories passed down for thousands of years, but not believe stories from other non-Hebrew ancient cultures, just the ones found in a curated collection of stories known in Greek as Hagios Biblia, which translates to English as Sacred Scrolls, or as we call it today, the Holy Bible. The stories in the Bible were hand-picked from hundreds of ancient stories, most of which did not make it into the Protestant Christian Bible, because a few men got to decide which stories supported their personal belief of their interpretation of the ancient Hebrew God. And they also decided which stories needed to be left out. These men's choices defined the doctrine of the modern-day Christian faith. On top of that, the white, privileged interpretation of these hand-picked ancient stories is the foundation of the modern evangelical faith. We are told to believe the claim from these ancient Hebrew stories that God exists, because this collection of ancient Hebrew stories claims that God exists. In other words, we are told to believe the Bible's claim that God is real because the Bible says so. Believe what the Bible has to say is true because the Bible says what it has to say is true. That's it. No other reason or evidence provided. And if you don't believe the Bible, then you're a bad person who's going to hell, according to the book you don't believe in. But is that actually what the Bible says? Is that what Jesus actually says? According to the stories of Jesus found within the Bible, are we supposed to believe Jesus just because he says so? Here's the bad news. According to the Bible, if you believe in it, of course. Throughout the biblical narrative, people were never expected to believe in God without evidence. How have we all missed that, to the point in which the opposite is preached and taught? I know that's a crazy claim, so here's my evidence. Exodus 4:1-7, Moses said to God, "What if they don't believe you sent me?" God replied, "Perform these 2 signs, then they will believe you." For the first sign, Moses turns his staff into a snake, then back into a staff. For the second sign, Moses' hand develops a skin disease, then it's healed. Exodus 4:8-9, God said to Moses, "If they still don't believe you, then take some water from the Nile River, pour it onto the dry ground. When you do that, the water from the Nile will turn to blood." Neither Moses nor God expected the people of Israel to believe what Moses was saying without any evidence to back up his claim. So God, through Moses, allowed the people to witness 3 signs and wonders that prove God's legitimacy. And the evidence doesn't stop there. God then continues demonstrating signs and wonders to Pharaoh and all of Egypt and all of Israel through the 10 plagues. God did not expect Pharaoh to believe what Moses told him without any evidence. He gave him 10 visible and physical signs and wonders as proof. 1 Kings 18:33-39. The prophet Elijah said, "Pour water over the offering and the wood." So they did as he said. They poured so much water that it flooded the altar and even filled the trench that surrounded the altar. Then Elijah prayed to his God. Immediately the fire of God flashed down from the sky and burned up the young bull, the wood, the stones, and the dust. It even licked up all the water in the trench. And when all the people saw it, they fell face down on the ground and cried out, "Now we do believe in your God." God understood that it wasn't enough for the people to simply believe Elijah's words or testimony. Through Elijah, they personally witnessed evidence that proved God's legitimacy. Those are just two examples out of many found in the Old Testament of God giving unbelievers proof and evidence of His existence. Not once will you find God expecting anyone to believe without proof or evidence. Not even when Jesus Himself spoke. Acts 2:22, People of Israel, listen. God publicly endorsed Jesus by doing powerful signs and wonders through Him. John 2:23, Many people began to trust in Jesus because of the miraculous signs He did. John 3:2, After dark one evening, Nicodemus came to speak with Jesus. He said, We all know that God has sent you to teach us, because your miraculous signs are evidence that God is with you. John 7:31, Many among the crowds at the temple believed Jesus was the Messiah. They said, Would anyone expect the Messiah to do more miraculous signs than this man has done? The crowds believed what Jesus had to say not because He claimed to be the Messiah, but because He gave them visible and physical evidence to support His claims. He understood people needed proof in order to be convinced, so He gave them proof. He didn't expect them to blindly believe Him. That wouldn't have been a reasonable expectation, even for Jesus. Imagine how less reasonable it is for modern Christians to expect atheists to believe them without any visible or physical evidence. John 15:24, Jesus said, If I had not done miraculous signs among them that no one else could possibly do, then they would have good reason for not believing in me. However, they have seen all my signs and wonders, yet they still don't believe. Jesus could not have been more clear than that. What He's saying is, people cannot be held responsible for not believing in Him or in God if they are not given convincing proof or evidence. Jesus performed visible and physical signs and wonders that gave people reason to trust that what He was saying was true. Now, once Jesus left the scene, His disciples and apostles did not begin telling people to believe in what they were saying about Jesus, or even about the signs and wonders He had performed. Signs and wonders they had not personally seen. The disciples understood that their testimony was not enough. People needed to see for themselves, with their own eyes, the proof and evidence of what they were being told. Acts 14:3, The apostles stayed there a long time, preaching, and God proved their message was true by giving them power to do miraculous signs and wonders. Romans 15:17-19, Paul said, I have reason to be enthusiastic about all Christ has done through me, bringing the Gentiles to God by the way I worked among them. They were convinced by miraculous signs and wonders. In this way, I have fully presented the good news of Christ. 2 Corinthians 12:12, Paul said, When I was with you, I certainly gave you proof. I did many signs and wonders among you. Hebrews 2:4, God confirmed the truth of the gospel by giving people signs and wonders. Mark 16:20, the disciples went everywhere and preached, and God worked through them, confirming what they said by many miraculous signs. And lastly, Acts 8:6. Because of Philip's miraculous signs, crowds listened to what he had to say. If you are able to believe that God is the Messiah, or that God is real without any physical proof or evidence, then good for you. But that is not what the Bible, Jesus, or God expects from anyone. If you find yourself evangelizing to atheists and they don't believe a word you're saying because you are incapable of providing convincing evidence to prove your claims about God, then you have no right to judge them or hold them accountable for their lack of belief. It is 100% your responsibility to show them miraculous signs and wonders in order for them to have any reason to believe you. Have you ever witnessed miraculous signs and wonders that prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that God exists? Probably not. But if you actually have, then you're one of the few. Are you able to perform miraculous signs and wonders yourself? Probably not. And if you actually can, then how come you haven't recorded it on video for the world to see as evidence that the God you claim to believe in is real? I mean, how can you tell an atheist that God can heal them or their family members, and when you pray for them, nothing happens? How is that experience supposed to convince anyone that the God you believe in is real? We, as Christians, talk too much. We judge too much. We criticize non-believers for not believing what we believe, or not agreeing with what we agree with. We shame them for not having as much faith as us. Enough. Enough talk, enough shame. Put your actions where your mouth is. You say God can heal the sick? Then prove it by having God heal the sick through you. You say God takes care of the needy? Then you take care of the needy. You say God feeds the hungry? Then you feed the hungry. You say God is merciful, loving, and compassionate? Then you demonstrate those characteristics. You think you can convince atheists or people of other religions to believe in your God just because a book that they don't even believe in says so? Of course not. You think you can convince non-believers to believe in your religion by threatening them with the concept of hell, a concept they don't even believe in? Of course not. The logic of those types of conversations is so bad that it's comical. You are not helping anyone enter the kingdom of Christ by talking about unrelatable supernatural things and then not provide any proof or evidence to support your claims. The question is, since it seems no one can do these signs and wonders anymore, what are Christians supposed to do to convince people that the God you believe in is real? The bad news is, Christians are not supposed to do that. The job of a Christian is to convince people to follow Christ. So how are we supposed to do that? Well, that's easy. Treat others the way Christ would have treated them. Treat others the way you would like to be treated. Act and behave like Christ. Love like Christ. If you do that, then you'll have no trouble convincing anyone that if we all strive to love and respect one another, the world will be a better place for it. No one would doubt you when you tell them that is how we bring heaven to earth. Your job as a follower of Christ is not to convince atheists to become theists. Your job is not to convince people to believe in the same divine being you believe in. That doesn't make anyone more like Christ. How many theists, those who do believe in God, don't act anything like Christ? A lot. How many atheists or people of other religions who do not believe in your God act more like Christ? A lot. Because whether or not you believe in God does not define whether or not you are good. How you treat others defines your character. Do you see the meaninglessness of attempting to convince people to believe that God exists? Stop wasting your time and atheists' time on getting them to believe what you believe. Instead, help and encourage others to be more loving, joyful, peaceful, patient, kind, good, gentle, and to have more self-control. Teach others how much better this world would be if we all worked at feeding the hungry, giving a drink to the thirsty, welcoming foreigners and immigrants, clothing the naked, taking care of the sick, and bringing justice for the oppressed and marginalized. Those things are our modern day signs and wonders. When Christians finally unite in actually helping the least fortunate in our society and world, will people then have enough evidence to believe in the teachings of Jesus? Only then will they have reason to follow Christ. The gospel is not about theist or atheist, Hindu or Christian, Protestant or Orthodox. The gospel is news, good news. Though there is so much corruption, oppression, and suffering in this world, we can still change it. We can still live on earth as if it were heaven. But if we are to have any chance in uniting humanity, we first must put aside our differences of religion and theologies and focus on our common desire for happiness and peace, starting from the lowest and the most humble of people. A world in which the last are first and the first are last. A world in which we each desire to serve one another instead of forcing others to serve us. A world in which we are our brother's keeper and sisters. The ultimate sign and wonder is when we finally decide to die for one another instead of killing each other. You still think believing in God is beneficial? Tell that to all those who died in the Crusades, Holocaust, colonial genocide, and hundreds of other wars done in the name of God. Believe in God if you want, but do not for 1 second think that the Bible, Jesus, or even the God you claim to believe in requires that of anybody else. The only thing the gospel requires of us is to bring good news to the poor, proclaim that the captives will be released, and that the oppressed will be set free. And then actually work towards fulfilling those claims.